Together, my friends, we have begun a political revolution to transform America, and that revolution, our revolution, continues.
Bernie Sanders lost the primaries choosing the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party to Hillary Clinton. But it was a glorious loss. It's a beginning, not an end. The end of Bernie's campaign marks the start of a political movement. But how do you build such a movement? And how can a new political generation bring American democracy back into the hands of the people? This is Backlight. Welcome to the laboratory for truly representative democracy.
This land was made for you and me.
Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be president.
Hillary Clinton lacks the judgment to lead our nation.
Thanks for joining us for the second hour of 360.
In the shadows of the bizarre race for the White House between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and inspired by the remarkable success of the Bernie Sanders campaign, a new movement is now gearing up. During the primaries, the then 74-year-old Democratic socialist Bernie Sanders came closer to a victory over Clinton than almost anyone, friend or foe, had expected. Sanders won 43% of the popular vote, beating Clinton among young people. His campaign made primary history by receiving a record number of donations from individual citizens, not Wall Street. To conclude the primary season, members of the Democratic Party convened in Philadelphia to choose their presidential nominee. This is where the anti-establishment insurgent campaign, run by independent Senator Bernie Sanders, ultimately came to a close.
I move that the convention suspend the procedural rules. I move that all votes cast by delegates be reflected in the official record, and I move that Hillary Clinton be selected as the nominee.
Thank you very much. I wanted to ask you about this moment, which basically is the official end of a campaign. How did you experience this moment?
Bittersweet. I mean, we knew for quite some time that the campaign was not going to be, he was not going to win the presidential nomination from the Democratic Party.
Jane O'Meara is not only Mrs. Sanders, but has been Bernie's closest political advisor for years and was part of the core team leading his campaign for president.
For me, the low point of the campaign was the convention. It was difficult. They were not being as warm as we might have liked. It was definitely a convention that didn't treat our supporters as well as we wanted them to be treated. We stayed in to move the agenda forward and make it as progressive as we could and use as much leverage as we had. The media was asking us every day, every time he was in front of a camera, when are you going to drop out? When are you going to endorse? And it was hard because it was clear he was not going to be the nominee. And they started to say, well, this is just a personal thing that he's doing. No, it was to get the health care and the higher education plans through. So we sat down, we met with Secretary Clinton for a couple hours in a hotel room to map out what we needed, to be able to move forward together in unity.
Hell no, DNC! We don't want no Hillary!
One of the harder things was not going out to the protests. It was such a delicate time that we wanted to have a unified convention, and if we went out, the media would have taken it totally out of context.
Bernie! 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 Bernie!
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Sanders has moved in the spirit of unity to suspend the rules.
As the Sanders campaign became more successful, there was a growing sense among his supporters that the Democratic Party wasn't particularly open to the new generation of voters, nor to the campaign themes Bernie Sanders was bringing in. This becomes painfully clear at the beginning of the Democratic Convention. The party chairwoman is forced to resign when 20,000 internal emails released through WikiLeaks show how the leadership went to great lengths to try to discredit Bernie Sanders in order to prevent a Clinton defeat. What Democratic Party leaders had orchestrated as a festive show of unity turns, after the WikiLeaks exposure, into a chaotic scene of angry Bernie delegates leaving the convention floor in protest.
Convention. These aren't just protesters. These are people with tickets inside. So a tense situation, not violent, but an interesting situation. Bernie Sanders seats, for the most part, empty inside, people outside here protesting what they view as an unjust result.
This land is your land. Show us what democracy looks like. California to the New York line.
If politics is dirty, it's time to clean it up. I'm 66 years old. I have wisdom. I've been a Democrat for 45 years. I didn't join the party just to support Bernie. They're rubbing the mud in our faces.
To hear just before the convention, what would I say, a confirmation of what we already knew and had been complaining about for 6 months, but to have it be that everybody knew and all our supporters had their concerns verified was really hard. And it was really hard for other people, more than it was for us. Actually, I'm saying more than it was for Bernie. It was hard for me and for the kids. He felt his response was, Jane, what's new here? We knew this. This is not a surprise. So nothing has changed. But it was detrimental to moving forward in unity.
I think it's fair to say that no one is more disappointed than I am. But to all of our supporters here and around the country, I hope you take enormous pride in the historical accomplishments we have achieved. And that revolution, our revolution, continues. It is nice to be home.
I think the question on the minds of a whole lot of people is, okay, we ran a great campaign, we woke up the American people, but where do we go from here?
Burlington, Vermont, the headquarters of the campaign, is where Bernie's political career started. As mayor, then congressman, and since 2007, senator in Congress. If the Democrats win back the Senate, he is likely to become the chairman of the powerful Budget Committee. The Sanders 2016 campaign will live on in a new nationwide movement.
So tonight I want to introduce you to a new independent nonprofit organization called Our Revolution.
It has always been, right from the beginning, a two-prong approach. It was run for the presidency and begin a political revolution. So we figured, okay, we're moving forward, and now we focus on the political revolution. We keep that agenda going and people engaged.
Our Revolution, founded by Jane Sanders, aims to keep the campaign's key issues high on the agenda of the media and wants to help elect progressive politicians into office, from council members and mayors to state and US representatives. They are running locally on a political platform similar to the Sanders campaign to try to hold the ground that was gained during the primaries.
If we can hold that ground and then move forward and keep on moving forward, dealing with criminal justice reform and immigration reform and all these issues that we've outlined in the platform, if we can actually implement some of those changes, then I think we will have steered the Democratic Party in the right direction. If the Democrats don't move forward, I think there will be a third party. It's not our decision, it'll be the people's decision. But I think things have changed enough that people have higher expectations of their government now. And they're not going to go away and say, okay, the election's over, we're done, we'll be back in 4 years, we'll miss the midterms. That's not going to happen. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen.
There are major, major, major issues that confront us today. And we need your help. We need the idealism and the energy and the intelligence of millions of people to join us in the fight to make America the kind of country we know it must become.
When you're building a movement, you're really trying to organically and systematically change the idea of what's possible in people's minds. And in an election, everyone always knows what's possible. Maybe that person will win, right? Like, that's what's possible. But with a movement, it's a much more soulful, intellectual, philosophical process of actually expanding your mind to say, that's something that should change in my life. That's something I deserve. That, I have enough value that I demand these things. And that will never happen in an election cycle, even in a longer election cycle. That will only happen over the course of decades.
Arun Chaudhary was creative director for the Bernie Sanders online campaign. Prior to that, he had worked closely with the man who entered the Oval Office in 2008.
I was lucky enough to be the first White House videographer, which meant that I got to tail around after the president holding a video camera. And it was a great job, like an absolutely outstanding job. And people always wonder, how could you possibly have left it? And while it was a great job, it was very demanding and very repetitive. And I remember when I came into work on St. Patrick's Day, my 4th year at the White House or whatever it was, and they had, dyed the fountain green and the Taoiseach was coming, and basically everything we had done exactly the same for the last 4 years of St. Patrick's Day, I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't think I can handle this anymore. It's just sort of too repetitive. I'm not sure I'm getting anything out of it. And sort of felt a little despondent about how was I going to put my energy and, what stories was I going to tell. I had been working for this one person for so long, literally focusing on his face every morning.
One of the reasons our campaign is doing so well is that we are discussing the real issues facing the American people.
I was really excited when we heard that Bernie Sanders might be running. He was someone who, even in my sort of punk rock youth, I had very much admired. And, they're all crooks in Congress, but there's actually this one guy.
The economic reality for most Americans is pretty clear. For the last 40 years, the American middle class has been disappearing, and more Americans are living in poverty than at almost any point in our nation's history.
We actually approached them and said, we would like to do this. We think we'd be a good fit. And after even only a couple of meetings, that was definitely the case. I remember Bernie was in our office and he was having some talks with folks in his campaign about whether or not they were really going to use the political revolution as a subtitle of this campaign. And he knew he was in good hands when he looked over at us and he was like, guys, you think it's a good idea, right? The political revolution. And we were, of course.
Getting hot in here. It is wrong that people have to work 2 or 3 jobs to survive. It is wrong that young people are leaving school $50,000 in debt.
How do you keep the momentum going of a movement like this?
I think the idea that we keep the momentum going is incorrect. I think the momentum goes. I think I think a lot of the ways in which a new kind of way of campaigning and of doing politics was formed was during the Obama campaign. Those same tools were then used, further democratized by Bernie Sanders to sort of put cracks in the political machine that's going on.
Our job is to bring people together.
Normally, a political campaign is about control. The far longer you get into it, the more, first you're a volunteer, then you're a precinct captain, you get talking points, you're sort of brought into a campaign family. This was a movement. It relied so much on people in the community making content, sharing content, that I wasn't going to be able to control the look, feel of. Our designers weren't going to be able to manipulate.
Vote for us. The single mothers who work for $7 an hour and never quite make it. The graduates with dreams deferred by crushing student debt. The veterans.
We made our content knowing that it was going to kind of live in a sea of very colorful, self-created content. Someone who kind of came into this campaign from the Obama world thinking user-generated content is kind of a fishy, weird proposition that I don't really want to have anything to do with, to being a cheerleader and champion of it.
The Bernie Sanders campaign message, focusing on income inequality and the economy of the 99%, particularly resonated with young people.
The votes of young people.
Sanders dominated the youth vote, beating Clinton by 80% in some states.
Young people understand that they are the future of America, and they intend to help shape that future.
I think when we're talking about the young people Bernie Sanders rally, they have a very common experience, which is the Great Recession of 2008. They have a time in which they were told that they were growing up in the richest country on earth, but no one they know has any money. Everyone is working 1 million jobs, but no one is getting ahead. And I think they feel inherently like politicians were lying, are lying, and will continue to lie about that. And so want to see an authentic face on someone that they will actually support. And I think you saw this really clearly with Bernie Sanders.
I think when I watched them, in the beginning, it brought me back to that first debate when I met Bernie. I fell in love with him then and there, I think. I fell in love with his ideas. I thought he embodied everything I ever believed in. And I would see that in people's eyes. And I remembered having that feeling, thinking, oh, I recognize that. But I think people liked that he spoke from the heart and he told the truth. He never changed his words from one group to the other. He said the same thing to everyone, whether they wanted to hear it or not.
Thank you for coming.
We went to an event in Iowa. We drove up, Phil was driving, and Bernie said, oh, look, Phil, look at those lines of people. What are we competing with? And Phil says, I think that's you, Bernie. Like, we couldn't believe it.
And when you stand together here in Cedar Rapids, you're not only protecting the people in this community. All right, I can use that. You're not only protecting the people in this community.
The first huge rally we did was in Minneapolis, where, we were trying to get bagels for a couple hundred people and like 8,000 people showed up, which was amazingly gratifying to me and very reminiscent of Obama. It also, I think, showed how with an insurgent, unlikely campaign like the Sanders campaign, how you have to catch up with physical infrastructure.
In Phoenix, Arizona, there were like 10,000 people there. we were very surprised. I mean, we were surprised when it happened in Portland, Maine, but not shocked. In Arizona, we were shocked. It was exciting as could be. It was something that we said, this can happen all over the country.
The movement that's built around Bernie Sanders is a specific response to our times. You know, we're living in a post-recession, post-Citizens United. You know, this generation of people, we have seen some things directly, that the culmination of many decades of bad policy, and they've come home to roost. And if and I think specifically people are reacting against those things.
So the thing that really got me excited was, I think, when he started pulling thousands of people at rallies, and it was just one of those things where there's just this moment where you suddenly you see that and you're like, okay, stuff's changing, and this is really a chance to like be a part of something that's gonna change the world. After college, I ended up actually working at a hedge fund for 10 months. I was going to work there for a year and a half, and I didn't quite make it. Whenever you asked anyone at the hedge fund, I remember doing this a couple of times, like, so why, like, what drives you? Why do you think this is like a worthwhile thing to do? And the usual answer people give is like, well, increasing liquidity in the market is a very, okay, that sounds like, that sounds like crap. And so I kind of thought I'd saved up enough to quit, so I just quit. And then the economy crashed, so I lost most of my savings. When it comes to economic issues, I think a lot of millennials are facing the crunch quite up front. I think it's literally a destruction of faith in the institutions that they've been told of. And so people are starting to, to be cliche, wake up and rethink those institutions and rethink what an actual moral, just life and government should be. So I think that's great. And I don't think that's going to change until the institutions get fixed.
Together with other former Sanders campaign staffers, Shoikot Chakrabarti founded Brand New Congress. From the bottom up, they want to create a new political generation with people from all walks of life, including both Democrats and Republicans. They are already prepping for the congressional midterm elections of 2018.
If we can get the word out there and let people know that, that together we're going to be able to keep this revolution going forward, I think we're going to be able to bring in not just people that have been active for Bernie, but a whole swath of other people, because this concept is going to be bigger than a president. It's going to be Congress.
I don't think people who vote Democrat are bad. The idea behind Brand New Congress is that what we want to do is recruit and run over 400 congressional candidates for the 2018 races, but as a single campaign. So as sort of presidential style, you have one campaign organization, one platform, one plan, and it's basically like the Bernie Sanders campaign, except at the top you have 400 people instead of just one. We think it's not that hard to win in a lot of these primaries, but we think the way to do it is not doing it piecemeal, one candidate at a time. We think you present something that's big enough with a very explicit goal. If I vote, I'm going to get this very aggressive plan for going to 100% renewables. Or if I vote. Our midterm turnouts for elections are low every single time, and it's always because you don't know who to trust. You don't necessarily know what you're voting for, and you don't know why it matters. So that's the whole premise here, is that if it's something big enough, people will go out to vote.
Is unity at the bottom. People talk about the 99% all the time, and if we're going to have the 99% truly represented, that means there's going to be a lot of different political ideologies represented, right? So we've got to be able to be an open tent, a big tent. And that's the only way we think this is going to work. And I think it is going to work because, like I say, I spent the last year on the Sanders campaign going city to city, state to state, and seeing a real huge variety of people that are supporting this cause and this platform. We're going to be going around in this 100-city tour and in other ways, recruiting people that are already active in their communities in different ways, right? So we don't want just lawyers and career politicians. We want doctors and nurses and stay-at-home mom and dads in Congress, right? We want to see a real variety and diversity in backgrounds. There's also not much variety in economic status in Congress. Most of these people are either millionaires or multimillionaires, and they spend their time talking to other millionaires and billionaires, right? So they got a very narrow window of who they're trying to represent.
All of the logistics of running a campaign are actually going to be handled by a brand new Congress. So that's the one of the main reasons we want to run this sort of unified single campaign, is so that normal working people can sort of plug into our infrastructure. We're going to handle raising money for you. We're going to handle doing voter contact for you. And it's essentially this large volunteer base that you are able to use to run your campaign. We don't even think a lot of people are going to have to leave their jobs. There's obviously going to be a part of the campaign that you have to do, which is speaking to people, talking to constituents, the parts that a candidate should be doing. But it's not going to be on you to be figuring out how to raise money, figuring out how to hire a campaign manager.
If you want to host some events and volunteer locally, please speak to us. We want to get you signed up and get that started.
But how can a new political generation make its entry into a system that currently seems open mostly to politicians supported by corporate money, big banks, and the Washington elite?
If we shift to a system where you are forced to make the most effective campaign, you're forced to do small donor contributions and have a good message and have something that people are going to back, then that completely shifts how the system works. I think this is a game changer.
With donations from individual citizens, Brand's new Congress wants to follow in Bernie Sanders' footsteps. His campaign set new records during the primaries by often raising more money from small individual donations than Hillary Clinton got from Wall Street. This means of funding a campaign has the potential to completely alter the current division of power in American politics.
What we said was so revolutionary and simple. If you want a candidate who will stand with you, please stand with us. And in the last year, we have received 7 million individual campaign contributions. That is more campaign contributions than any candidate in the history of the United States of America.
We couldn't believe it. We were astonished that that many people were giving money right from the beginning. And we would get letters, which we always have, from people who were on fixed incomes or just didn't have that much, and they'd be sending in $5 or $10, and it was just so heartfelt and wonderful. It gave more of a sense of we're representing the people we want to represent. These are our people that are hearing this plan and this vision for the future, and they're on board.
One of the first of now many progressive candidates for Congress endorsed by Bernie Sanders and the movement is Zephyr Teachout. After a career of teaching law, she is now campaigning in a large rural district in upstate New York.
Please welcome Zephyr Teachout.
Somebody from his staff reached out and said, Bernie Sanders wants to send out an email including your campaign. Is that okay? I said, yes, that's okay. But it wasn't clear to me what that meant. It wasn't clear that that was an endorsement. And then the next day it became very clear. I am totally committed to being a representative only of the people of this district. This is this sort of old-fashioned idea of representation, that you listen to the people here and then take their ideas to Washington. And what that means has been really important to me, that we are not funded in the traditional way. We have now 58,000 individual contributors. The average contribution is $19. I like to joke that my donors are much stingier than Bernie Sanders. Where's the extra $8? It's been really important to me to fund this campaign with low-dollar contributions, not just to win, But so when I am in Congress, I can only respond to people in this district.
This is a good lady. She's very smart.
I like Chris.
It's right here.
But
Okay.
all right.
You can take that with you.
But it'd be interesting to see a lady in there for a change, you know. But
She's a good
I don't know
person.
Faso. I don't know her, but
She's very. Go meet her. She's up the road. Ask her any questions you got.
This is the, you hear battleground or swing, this total split. And actually, one of the reasons it swings so much, and you'll see people who will vote for a Democrat for president, a Republican for Congress, a Democrat for something else. Fundamentally, people are really independent. So party line matters less than the spirit of independence and whether you're going to fight for people here.
A lot of us do. And I have a bumper sticker on my back window of my truck that says, "No farms, no food."
Right. Well, here's some more bumper stickers if you want some.
I'll put one of those on there, yeah.
Okay. What the candidates do is they just spend time talking to incredibly wealthy people who then give them money to put up those signs that you see. And so instead of listening to farmers, that basically they just spend their time listening to New York City billionaires.
So many Congress members spend all their time, or actually the average is 40 to 70% of their time. 40 to 70%, like the majority of their day job, is calling rich people.
As you may see, this part, I don't think John Faso has been here. So, the guy I'm running against, just to be clear, not only, he's been a lobbyist for the last 10 years. He was a lobbyist for payday lenders, lobbyist for the Constitution pipeline, lobbyist for the NED pipeline.
Did he work in the Assembly?
And he was in the Assembly. And in the Assembly, he was always saying the exact same thing. It's pretty conservative.
I mean, you don't get more different than John Faso and myself. So you have on the one hand a campaign that is funded by 2 New York City hedge fund billionaires, and on the other hand, my campaign, which is funded by 58,000 people.
I love that you have an intense connection to working with the people, and you're very tuned into financially representing the people and not the large investors and the donors. It's been a big part of your campaign. I think that's incredibly important. I think that is one of the major issues with our country.
Yes, it
and
is.
our government, and the trust in government is whose voice is represented. And so, and I think it's very brave and of you to take on that role. I think more people need to run for office, and I am, so far, have not yet been that brave, but
you will.
Maybe.
Say hi to Vanessa.
I will.
When you have these billionaires trying to take over politics, you can't sort of combat that by just trying to raise billionaire money on the other side. Like, that doesn't work. The response to billionaires taking over politics is harder, but far more rewarding work of local organizing.
I think that not having to raise money directly from large campaign contributors, from having to go to fundraisers, just allows you to keep focused on your core issues, on your core message, and just doesn't dilute things. And I think sometimes, especially in an era where transparency is demanded by people, you do want to keep up the appearance, even if you feel like you are not being influenced by something. You want to keep up that appearance that you're not, because people can see what's happening now. We live in a more transparent society.
The only reason a small donor campaign or small donor back campaign like Bernie Sanders is possible is because of the fact that the internet is so big and that things can spread now without having a mainstream channel be the thing that spreads it. And it was a huge bet on the campaign's part to say, actually, we're going to raise almost all our money this way and not even have a fundraising team, not focus on dinners. And we're going to make the bet that for technologists like me, I'm like, yeah, obviously the internet's been big. Like, I kind of don't, but it's groundbreaking in the political world.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shortcut, and I'm also working on the Bernie Sanders.
Technology is not only a game changer for campaign funding, but also for organising campaigns. The group Coders for Sanders was a fast-growing number of coders who volunteered during the primaries to develop software and apps for the Sanders campaign.
So we're just basically going to talk about Progressive Coders Network. And just to give a sense of what has happened this week,
Renamed the Progressive Coders, they have expanded into a nationwide movement of more than 2,000 programmers. Together they are building the technology for future elections.
I'm John Culver. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I'm a Bernie Sanders delegate. I worked on the campaign for a while. I worked with Roppy and Coders for Sanders. I built a bunch of stuff. We worked on the events map together. I built a caucus explainer that Washington and other states use to great effect called Burn Advisory.
Bernie showed us the problem of this society, and that clicked into the coder psyche, like, there's a solution for this. And we thought about, and what is the problem? The problem is organizing. How can we engage these people into participating in the political process? Because Bernie keeps on saying, if we show up, we win. And that was the core of, like, okay, how can we make people show up? And that's where Burn Advisory comes in, that's where Bernie BNB comes in, that's where Ride with Bernie comes in. All these things put into a whole, engage millions of people.
I'm one of those antsy people, like, what can we do from this? If we're not happy with this party structure that's been put in place, let's get to work. Like, let's see some better candidates. Let's put ourselves up. Let's start at the smallest level of building this up ourselves, because it is people powered. That's us.
If we could organize in a way that we can combine our efforts and really help the progressive movement, I think there's a huge chance that we are going to make a difference. We're in a time wherein we're in the onset of the golden age of progressivism, I feel.
With the close involvement of so many young people of the tech generation, the Sanders campaign built a huge online presence through, amongst others, Snapchat and Reddit. Bernie still has over 4 million followers on Twitter and 5 million Facebook friends, and his team was able to garner extremely valuable data on voters. To secure this digital inheritance and to make campaigning accessible to and affordable for all citizens, National Guard soldier and progressive coder Josh Smith is looking for new coders.
So, as students here at Learn, you're a pretty unusual audience. You enrolled in this school because whatever you were doing before wasn't enough for you. For you, that could mean any number of things. For me, it's been especially hard to determine how to make a meaningful difference. Where do I even start? I thought that the best that I could do was join the Army or join the Peace Corps.
I went to basic training. This was me as a platoon guide, leading all of our platoon through the very dusty trails of South Carolina.
While I was there, this wispy-haired, 74-year-old, self-avowed Democratic socialist started his run for president. I grew inspired. Talk about a moonshot candidate. The skills that I learned the hard way, and you're learning a hard way here, are especially unique in some way. They feel unique. There's a power to the leverage of building for the internet. I wanted that kind of impact here. Now, fortunately, I found a group called Coders for Sanders, and
I don't think that we've really begun to understand how technology is going to have significant impacts on politics, on governance. Given that incredible growth that we've got in technology, it seems to me that nobody has really understood what that's going to do in terms of social structures, social institutions that need to pick up on those changes. I think that you end up being able to transition a campaign into a political movement by building on the roots of its success. Things like the volunteers building software for the campaign. You didn't have to run campaigns the same way that you ran them previously. You didn't have to go out and build a field office and bring in volunteers and hand out paper and clipboards. It was certainly possible for somebody to say, I want to volunteer for the Bernie Sanders campaign, open up an app on their phone, and start canvassing and talking about what they believed in with their neighbors right away. So when you first load up the app, you'll end up clicking that house button and you'll get the address that you're at geolocated for you. We're going to tap add person, and then I'm talking to Jane Doe right now. So Jane Doe, this is the first time that we've ever talked to her. Maybe she's not a registered voter. And I say that she's a Democrat and she is strongly for Bernie. Especially interesting, too, is when you click on Bernie on the issues, you get everything that the feeltheburn.org people had put together directly on your phone. So if you're talking to somebody and asking them, do you care about, the military, which is important to me, and see everything that Bernie Sanders has ever said about that topic and communicate it to them, look through and say, hey, would this information be interesting to you? What I'm trying to do with the things that I'm trying to build going forward is saying, this was great that we did this for the Bernie Sanders campaign, but any campaign should be able to use it. In fact, Tea Partiers should be able to use the same sort of tools that we built. This is Movement, which is the second coming of the Feel the Burn app. So you can see the key difference is already the numerous elected officials here rather than it just being the Bernie app. You basically get to choose, maybe today I want to go out and canvass for Bernie, or maybe I want to go canvass for a particular cause, or maybe I want to canvass just generally. I want to go talk to voters. Then we'll give you a walking list with actual data. And of course, the data ends up being one of the fundamental parts of this. These are tools for democracy itself. We're trying to build this public service, this infrastructure that our government hasn't, but we as the people can certainly build. The survival of those ideas, of that way of working, of the infrastructure that powered all of it, aren't going to be dependent on a single individual, but instead, everyone can adopt, everyone can use, everyone can benefit from. And if you have that sort of pluralism powering those tools, that way of working, then it will survive anything, right? It's not even just the progressive movement at that point. It is governance as a whole, democratic governance.
Are these then the components of a movement that can build towards a truly representative democracy? Barack Obama's victory in 2008 was historic, but it was not followed by the birth of a new political generation. There was a different kind of president, but the system in Washington remained largely unchanged. Will that be different now? Because the Sanders campaign was a movement right from the start? In a post-crisis society, with a millennial generation more open than ever before to Bernie Sanders' call for a political revolution, it looks as if, sooner or later, systematic change will be inevitable.
I actually would go back to the crash of 2008 and say that after the crash of 2008, basically the country woke up and the political elite stayed asleep. And Congress and the Senate and pundits all acted like nothing had happened. And the rest of us said, wait a second, you can't get all these subsidies as big banks and then become so fragile that you can ruin our economy. This is not a way to run an economy. This is not a way to run a democracy. With the Sanders campaign, you see that legitimate anger and that legitimate other understanding waking up and finding a real political voice.
I think we have an entrenched political class, but I think for the first time, ordinary people think, I can do more than throw money at this problem. I can be more than volunteer to try to get rid of this. I can make this my life. And I think there's no way to calculate how much that will accelerate progress and also political and cultural life in this country. I think it's about to change in a lot of ways because of this moment where message and technology meet a population who is ready to move on.
This isn't a one-man show. This is something that will have staying power, that people will write about, will think about it, and will consider, I can do that. I mean, Bernie didn't come up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He didn't come up in a political family. He decided He wanted to have a voice. And one of the best things about this campaign is that the country has shown that a progressive perspective is something that a lot of people are very interested in. They are aware that, wait a minute, we don't have to accept this. We do not have to say, this is the way it is, I'm giving up, I'm not going to do anything with politics. No, this is our democracy, and we are going to participate fully and make the changes that are necessary. And it takes time. That's the difficulty, that people sometimes don't understand. It does take time.
Let us be lovers, we'll marry our fortunes together. I've got some real estate here in my bag, so we bought a pack of cigarettes.
Man, you just like me over here. God. Sorry. All the millions of people that went out and hoped that this was going to be it, their moment, and it wasn't. It hurts. But we're not done. We're not done yet.
Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, they've all come to look for America. All come to look for America. All come to look for...
Thank you for watching. For more on this subject, take a look at the playlist. You can also watch this recommended video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and we'll keep you updated on our documentaries.